It's an idea. What if the roots of racism are completely misunderstood? No, first of all, I'm not denying that racism doesn't exist. There are plenty of people out there who are absolute dicks to full classes or groups of people, regardless of skin color or not. So, isms on the whole like that, judgment on the whole like that, been stuck in this quote I keep hearing again and again, which is, if a group doesn't take care of its extremists, they will be defined by those extremists. But then society uses psychology and manipulation tactics to twist that into a narcissistic statement, saying, you're racist because you see patterns, and they might concern you or your safety. Again, this doesn't qualify for all those who actually are derogatively racist, but the general narrative, I do believe, has picked up the term, pumped it full of fucking emotional overweight and exaggeration, and then thrown it about everywhere to be able to block out every other definition of it. But there is multiple definitions and multiple circumstances to every single word. And then it gets picked up and used for narratives and purposes, and then that becomes the leading definition of it because that's most forefront in people's memories. So people forget that, yeah, stereotypes, if there's a negative stereotype of the race or the group of people, it's generally because that group of people doesn't regulate its own group. And so they become defined by those negative characteristics. Whereas every other group is self-managed, self-capable of regulating itself, many aren't. And then they push their responsibility on other people in a disempowering way, saying it's your fault that they're upset about that, when they're the ones who are not regulating their own community and are then defaulting that irresponsibility to people external to that group. So then the external environment to that group then have to then police that inner group because they're going out of control. Now, all of the variations and fluctuations between every different culture and every different spectrum still plays in an account with what I've just said there. I can see it clear as day. That despite the fact that there are groups of people here, that underneath that, there is a distortion there deliberately trying to obscure and obfuscate where this comes from. And it comes from self-group identity responsibility. If you create a group, if you belong to a group, if you belong to an association or a business, and you don't self-regulate, let's back it up. You run a business. There's 3 people that run the business, you, 2 other people. Both of them are your best friends. One of them is seen to be committing fraud as co-CEO of the organization. You find out, and then the police find out, and they find out that you knew, and now you're getting in trouble because they're not doing what's right, and you're not doing something about it. Duty of care goes beyond making sure that somebody isn't dying in front of your face. It goes far beyond immediate responsibility for safety. It also includes things like knowing that if you give a child to somebody and you're certain they're going to abuse that child, that you're consenting in some capacity for them to go ahead and do that. If you have an idea, an internal capacity to be able to see and read a circumstance, and you don't follow through with that, that's your responsibility. So if you're in a group and you've got a whole bunch of violent people in the group and you don't follow through with your responsibilities, you will be known as a violent group. If you're in a group and you've got violent people and they're loaded with their own responsibilities, then they will help each other self-regulate, grow, and learn from each other, and they won't be known as a violent group. A group will become defined by those that it doesn't regulate, because those are the ones that will smear the reputation of the group, and those are the ones that will get known Not the invisible group members, not the ones who are doing everything nice and polite behind the scenes because they're not getting any attention. The ones at the front and center creating the most noise and the most obscure obnoxiousness are the ones getting the attention. And the ones that are then defining the public image of that group. And you, whoever you are not responsibly racist or not necessarily racist because of somebody else's inability to handle their own responsibility. You can't just throw words around and insult people for no reason at all. You actually have to have grounds for it. And if somebody has grounds and evidence to show that that's unsupported, it doesn't matter how much time you scream in their face, it doesn't change that fact. And in fact, that's belligerence bordering on violence. And if somebody retaliates to you, you deserve it. If you touch somebody else and they retaliate, you deserve it. Right? We really need to get back to some fucking basics here, my friends.